What exactly does this mean for the overall robotaxi, autonomous vehicle kind of future that Elon paints?
Yeah, we have to really separate out robotaxi and what Tesla calls full self-driving, because that nomenclature has been a misnomer. It is a driver assistance system. When you activate it, you're in control of the vehicle. You're responsible for supervising it. And if you do get into a crash, Tesla has shown a tendency to turn around and blame you, the driver. And so there's a big difference between this system Tesla calls FSD and this robotaxi that Musk has managed to get Wall Street excited about, despite the fact that he's been talking about it as a concept now, since 2016 at least. But this is a big development in the sense that FSD, for all its shortcomings and the progress that still needs to be made for it to be, more widely used and accepted, it is bringing in incremental revenue, but only in certain markets. In the U.S., this is something that Tesla charges $8,000 for, or a $99 a month subscription. If it can, make arrangements to get incremental revenue out of its customers in China, it could boost its business there at a time it could sorely use a lift.
Craig, as best I can tell, you've been logged on your Bloomberg terminal for like 27 hours straight, coordinating our teams in China, the US, in Europe. Just explain the chronology of what happened. There were multiple stages to arrive at what is a tentative approval for FSD.
Yeah, I mean, we heard rumblings that Musk was maybe going to make this trip, and lo and behold, Sunday my time here in London, we wake up to this idea that yes, Musk has landed. This was a surprise in the sense that Tesla, doesn't even have a presence at this week's Beijing Auto Show. It's a show that got underway last week, but it certainly was, a timely visit in the sense that there are a lot of, government officials in town for the show. The auto industry has absolutely been a bright spot for the Chinese economy. And, China's relationship with Tesla has been really positive. This is, a success story, even with the challenges that this company has had lately with sort of continuing its momentum in China.
Market share being eroded to none other than BYD, the local competitor. Remind us of the deals that have had to be done with Chinese players, though, ultimately, to be able to get the granting.
Yeah, the key one that Ed flagged is with Baidu. And I think this is really interesting because, Elon Musk has been on the record for many years now saying that Tesla doesn't need maps, that maps are a crutch. So this is, a U-turn, if you will, if you can forgive a car pun, from this stance that this is not necessary. In China, however, in order for you to offer these sorts of systems, you need to have a partnership with a mapping and navigation company, and it just so happens that the companies that are, able to offer those services are all Chinese. It's very reminiscent of how China sort of controlled the battery, electric vehicle battery market in the more infant years of the EV industry for China, and it really was successful in helping sort of build up, world-dominating companies like CATL. They're looking to try and replicate that sort of pattern with companies that play a critical role in these driver assistance systems that may one day be able to support fully taking the human driver out of the equation.
And what's so interesting is Baidu is itself quite competent in the domain of at least developing autonomous technology. Look, the stock's up 12% or more, on track for its biggest jump since January 2022. Perceived good news. There is some more nuanced view in the markets about what Musk's actually doing here. Craig, listen to this.
Elon Musk saw an opportunity to go in there and say, look, I want to do this, because you've seen the clashes that have been going on between the U.S. and China. He's trying to put a foot in both sides and say, look, I've got this technology. And he had the premium brand in China. And then all of a sudden, the EVs in China started to get less expensive, and Tesla started to lose share, and he had to drop prices. So to me, this is a way to say, I'm going to change up this math for myself. But also, if I can be successful in this, then maybe I get to be the outlier.
That was Sarah Hunt, who's chief market strategist at Alpine Saxon Woods, earlier on Bloomberg Surveillance. We've got a very strong piece on the terminal out now talking about how, well, hold on, a week ago, Musk was supposed to go to India and he bailed. and he's gone straight to China, that it shows us the power dynamics and Musk's skill in all of this, right, Craig, in navigating geopolitics.
Yeah, I mean, there's been mutual back-scratching here between Elon Musk and the CCP for years now. Let's not forget that Tesla was the first, international car company or foreign car company to, be allowed to operate in China without having to agree to a joint venture with a local manufacturer. It was a huge, win for Musk and something that he fought for years. And, the construction of the plant for Tesla in Shanghai was, record time. It was extremely timely in the sense that, Musk was really ramping up the Model 3, trying to bring the Model Y out. And they were able to keep that plant running even during, the pandemic when, other plants in China had a really difficult time, opening back up from the initial shutdowns. And so, China has very much supported Tesla when Tesla needed it most. And, we're seeing U.S. companies pull back a little bit from China, maybe at least de-risk a little. Apple's a good example of doing so. By the way, in India, I think people were looking at a potential investment by Tesla in India as a similar move. And it's clear that Musk doesn't see, urgency to do that.